What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today, we are looking at the top 10 decks, in my opinion, for the Latin America International Championships coming up this week. These decks are ordered from 10th to 1st. First being the deck that I think will earn the most success at this event, earn the most championship points, has the best chance of winning, down to the 10th most likely deck to be successful and earn championship points, in my opinion, of course. So let me know in the comments down below what opinions of yours differ from mine, and all of these decks will also have deck lists included in them. If you want to see more deck lists, I would suggest going to play.limitlesstcg.com and then clicking on decks, and there will be a bunch of deck lists for you to check out and export to PTCGO or PTCG Live. Before we get into the top 10 decks, though, shout out to my sponsors, Dragon Shield Sleeves, Beast Coast Pokemon, PotownStore.com, and PokemonCard.io. You can find links to all of these websites and YouTube channels in the description down below, and be sure to subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. It's been a rough set for PALKIA INTELEON. I have PALKIA INTELEON down here in 10th place. It is by no means a bad deck, but I think it is falling down into tier 2 range because it doesn't have good matchups, really. It has Lugia, which is a poor matchup, and then the decks trying to beat Lugia, like Vikavolt, Regigigas, and Regigigas. Those decks are also good against PALKIA INTELEON, so PALKIA INTELEON doesn't have a lot going for it. It's still a great functional deck, but it doesn't have a good matchup spread. I think some players will play it out of comfort, and that's where its success will come from, but I don't think it's a deck that should be played this weekend. And here is our sample list today for PALKIA INTELEON. Trying some new things in here, and also you'll see that I have the person who played the deck list and also the tournament on play.limitlesstcg.com that they played it in case you want to go look at their matchups and export their list and things like that. Should be pretty easy with the tournament name here on the screen and the player's name on the screen as well. But yeah, so they're trying out this Articuno with Wild Freeze that can paralyze the opponent's Pokemon, and Lugia decks are typically not playing any way to switch out their Pokemon, so paralyzing can be really strong against Lugia for that reason. Also, Temple of Sinnoh can be really strong against Lugia, so you'll see Temple of Sinnoh being teched into a bunch of decks in today's top 10 breakdown. Number 9 is going to be KYURUEM PALKIA. This is probably the first time I've ever rated KYURUEM PALKIA higher than PALKIA INTELEON, but KYURUEM VMAX has metal weakness as opposed to lightning, so it's less affected by the lightning attackers that are trying to counter Lugia V-Star decks. And also KYURUEM VMAX is just a very powerful Pokemon all around. It has 330 HP, it has an ability that accelerates energy, and it has an attack with an infinite damage cap. So KYURUEM PALKIA decks haven't really changed much. Like I said, you're going to be seeing Temple of Sinnoh tossed into a lot of decks. This one's no different. This list had two Temple of Sinnohs in it, and also a Starmie V, which, you know, Starmie can be pretty strong against Lugia players that are powering up multiple Pokemon at a time. Number 8, ARCEUS DURALUDON. ARCEUS DURALUDON, on paper at least, should be good against Lugia V-Star. It's pretty good against single prize decks because Duraludon has high HP and you can heal with Hyper Potion and Crystal Cave, and it's good against, in general, anything using special energies, so it'll be good against Regigigas, like I said, Lugia V-Star. Other single prize decks like Lost Box, it'll typically be even at worst, and it's also good against PALKIA INTELEON. So ARCEUS DURALUDON, pretty good deck. You don't have a lot of player agency. There's not a lot of options to do in deck building or in gameplay, but it's a good deck that has good matchups because of what it does, and it's pretty linear, so you also don't have a lot of brain power being wasted throughout the day. So it's a deck you can probably play optimally throughout a long day and see a fair amount of even to favored matchups as well. This list here has a Thornton in it, which is definitely interesting. This list bubbled out of top 8 in the recent Limitless Showdown. Also has Big Parasol, that's going to be really good against both Star Requiem on Giratina V-Star and against Amazing Rare Eviltal, which is just about an auto include in Lugia V-Star decks right now. Number 7 is Vikavolt Regigigas. Vikavolt V is going to be strong against Lugia V-Star, against Palkia, and also against single prize decks that really rely on items. I mean, most decks today really do rely on items, and Regigigas VMAX from the new Silver Tempest is going to help power up this Paralyzing Bolt to do more than that measly 50 damage that it's been doing all along. Transistor on Regigigas says your basic lightning Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage, and this does stack if you have multiple Regigigas on the board. Even just that one helps a lot, because that means your Paralyzing Bolt is now knocking out Comfey and Cramorants, which it wasn't before. You'll also see some lists now playing the Raikou V, so you also have an aggressive attacker if you want to just, you know, start hitting with Lightning Rondos for 250, 280 damage, even more with the help of Regigigas Transistor plus Choice Belt, you can, and use the Vikavolt V's Paralyzing Bolt earlier in the game. Also, Farseal Stone is a great new card for Vikavolt decks because Vikavolt V itself is not a V-Star Pokemon, and some players will tech in like a Drapion V-Star or something, but I personally really love Farseal Stone in this deck. Number 6, Giratina Lost Zone. So this is a very hard to play deck, and I think it would be in my top 3 choices personally, but it is not in the top 3 decks that I predict will do the best and get the most points and the most placements, because it is a hard deck to play, and there are decks that have more inherent power that are easier to play up on this list. So that's kind of why Giratina is down here at number 6 for me, but it is a very, very strong deck. And really, I think everything from number 6 up here, I would not be surprised if any of these won the Masters Division at LAIC number 6 or above. And this is another great example of people tossing Temple of Sinnohs into their decks. So if you're going this weekend and you're playing a deck that relies on special energies heavily, like Lugia V-Star or Regigigas deck, then I would expect that a lot of your opponents may have some Temples of Sinnohs in their deck, and, you know, be prepared for that if it's extra stadiums or extra lost vacuums, a Pumpkaboo, things like that, to prepare for those Temple of Sinnohs. Number 5 is going to be Regigigas. This deck is super strong. It's all single prize Pokemon. You can hit a lot of different weaknesses, and you have Regigigas to take down the VMAX Pokemon with Gigaton Break plus a Choice Belt. So that's going to take out Mew VMAX. It's going to take out KYURUEM VMAX. It's going to take out the Duraludon VMAX as long as you can get through the ability with a Path to the Peak, and they don't have a Big Charm attached. So these lists don't change too much. You know, you got your gift energies that came in the last set because those are super good. We now have Serena in the deck, so now the deck has a gust effect. A lot of the popularized lists were playing either 0 or 1 boss's orders, so now Serena's around to give you a drawing card that can also be a gust effect when you need it, so that's good. 3 Path to the Peak, I think that's pretty standard right now as well. And the only Regi in this list that there's a 3rd copy of is the Regigigas, so you can play one of that Electromagnetic Sonar that gets a trainer back, or the targeted Bolt Attack that does 120 to a benched Pokemon. Number 4 is Lost Zone SABLE ZARD. This is probably the easiest Lost Zone deck to play out of Lost Zone SABLE ZARD, Lost Zone Mirage Gates, and Lost Zone Tina, but that's not to say that it's easy in you know, in relation to the entire format. It's still a very hard deck to play, but I think this is probably the Lost Zone deck that most people are comfortable with. Not to say that it's easy to play, of course, but it still does give you options. You have your Cramorant, you have your Sableye that you want to try to turbo into and start spreading around with Lost Zone, and then also the Charizard. Some lists play Magma Basin, some play Raihan as extra ways to start using Combustion Blast earlier on. And this list from Nico Alabas is also playing the Drapion V to have an easier time against Mew VMAX decks. Number 3 is going to be Lost Zone Mirage Gates. Now, although I think less people will play this than SABLE ZARD, there's just a lot of potential in this format for this deck, and I really thought this deck would have popped off more in the previous format, but I think a lot of players played it safe in the Lost Origin format since there was such a little amount of major events. There wasn't many major events for North American players. Even for European players, there weren't many events. So I think players played it safe, and now these lists are starting to emerge from Asia and from online events. And I can't wait to see what other creativity players come up with for these Lost Zone Mirage Gate decks. This one won the Limitless Showdown on play.limitlesstcg.com using that Kyogre from Celebrations that can just pop 2 Pokemon for 250 damage. I think it's incredibly strong. And also having, of course, the Cramorant, Sableye, and the Snorlax, rating Greninja as an attacker, and also the Raikou V to really help out against Palkia and Lugia V-Star. Number 2 is Mew VMAX Genesect, and there have been plenty of successful lists playing Meloetta and plenty of successful lists not playing Meloetta. I think the biggest thing to note is that Forest Seal Stone has been a huge buff, a huge positive new card for Mew VMAX Genesect as a whole, whether you're playing the Meloettas or you're not. Something important to note is Forest Seal Stone does work while Path to the Peak is out, and so not only is it a Path to the Peak counter kind of, but it's just a general go grab 1 card at any point in the game that you need it. And then you can play an extra one, even though you can only use 1 per game. They can just be Cram-O-Matic away, or you can just attach them to get cards out of your hand, so it's not a big deal playing that extra Forest Seal Stone. I think Mew VMAX is incredibly strong. I think it is the most consistent and most powerful deck in the format. If you want that consistency, that smoothness, that reliability, I think it is the strongest deck that's also very consistent and very reliable. And of course, the number 1 deck, Lugia V-Star Archeops. I think this deck is more powerful than Mew, but I do think it has a little bit more of a learning curve for the different parts of the game. Mew VMAX often feels like you're playing the same exact plan every game and throughout the entire game, whereas Lugia V-Star, I think those first couple turns, really understanding how to play that kind of deck is something that players will take some time to perfect and play optimal very often. And then also learning what techs are actually necessary in the deck and your prize mapping and what Pokemon you want to trade into your opponent's Pokemon, making sure you manage your special energies, because some of them, like Powerful, Colorless, and Aurora, are going to be very important in some matchups and also in different types of Lugia V-Star builds. So I think this is the most overtly powerful deck in the format. But I do think Mew VMAX will also be a very great choice for a lot of players who aren't as comfortable with Lugia V-Star yet and also want a more reliable deck. This is a recent winning list from the late night number 69. With the Amazing Rare Yveltal, the Radiant Charizard, the Amazing Rare Raikou. Those are very popular cards in the deck right now. I think Yveltal and Charizard are in just about every successful Lugia deck at the moment, while Raikou is it's kind of hit or miss. You know, some of the successful Lugia decks are doing fine without Raikou. Some of them are using the Raikou. I think Raikou really comes down to how many people do you expect to tech against that Raikou. Do you think every Lugia is going to have Dunsparce and or Manaphy? Do you think other decks are going to have Manaphy? But Raikou is strong in its own right, doing 120 and 120. Just not great to see a Manaphy across the board when you're playing it. So yeah, those are the top 10 decks, in my opinion, going into the LAIC this upcoming weekend. Let me know in the comments down below what y'all think. Let me know if how your opinions differ from mine on these top 10 decks, and any other thoughts, comments, or questions that you have, leave them down below. Also, like I said, if you want to see more deck lists, a lot more deck lists, go to play.limitlesstcg.com and peruse through those tournaments, look through the decks. There's a lot of information to take in on over there. So hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.